Hey everyone, thank you for joining us for the next episode of our GitHub Copilot CLI hands-on series. My name is Anna. I'll be your producer for this session. I'm an event planner for Reactor, joining you from Redmond, Washington. Before we start, I do have some quick housekeeping. Please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We seek to provide a respectful environment for both our audience and presenters. While we absolutely encourage engagement in the chat, we ask that you please be mindful of your commentary, remain professional and on topic. Keep an eye on that chat. We'll be dropping helpful links and checking for questions for our presenters to answer live. Our session is being recorded. It will be available to view on demand right here on the Reactor channel. With that, I'd love to turn it over to our speakers for today. Dan and Chris, thanks again for joining us.
Well, thank you, Anna, and welcome, Chris. Good to see you 2 days in a row here. This amazing.
So yeah, it's becoming a habit.
I know, and we're going to do it again next week too. So it's all good.
Totally.
So welcome, everyone. Some of you hopefully joined yesterday, but if you didn't, glad to have you. And we're going to dive into episode 2 of our GitHub Copilot CLI hands-on. And today we're going to be talking about development workflows and agents. Basically how you can build more specialization into your Copilot CLI. So to get started, let me introduce myself for those that weren't here yesterday. My name is Dan Wallen. I'm a cloud advocate at Microsoft, and I have my most excellent colleague, Chris Norring, with me here.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Thank you so much. And I have the pleasure of working with Dan on a daily basis. So we're super excited to bring this series about CLI to you all, because I think today is going to be exciting, right? Because you want the motivation. Why should I be using the CLI tool in the first place? And I guess, Dan, first topic is developer workflows, right?
Yeah. So we're going to dive right in here, folks. Now, if you didn't come yesterday, that's okay. We're going to do a real quick review of what we covered yesterday, give you the super short version of it, I guess. But as Chris mentioned, then we're going to dive right in and we're going to look at how the CLI can be used with various developer workflows. So kind of real life scenarios where we both find it useful, and I think you will too. And then we're also going to look, as I mentioned, at agents. And so we'll get to that in a moment. Now, if you want to follow along and you didn't come yesterday, real quick review for you. All you really need is GitHub Copilot, the CLI, and the course that I'm going to show you a link. You'll see it down at the bottom there. There's actually 2 links you can go to. You can pick your road if you want. But the course has chapter 00. It's the very first quick start, we call it. And it will walk you through installing it, logging in, all that stuff. Now, we kind of went through that yesterday, so I'm not going to do that part again. But that video is recorded from yesterday, so feel free to check that out if you would like. But the link that I'm going to be using is the repo, the GitHub repo for the GitHub Copilot CLI for Beginners course. And this is the link, but you can also get to it on Awesome Copilot. And Awesome Copilot, as we discussed a little bit yesterday, it has a whole bunch of cool AI features you can plug into the CLI. For example, skills and agents. We're going to be talking about skills next week, actually, Chris and I. But I'm going to be going to this first one. So just if you haven't been there yet, go ahead and run on over to there. I'll leave it up just a little bit longer here, and then we'll dive right in. So as a quick review, yesterday we talked about something called / commands, which we're going to see more of today. We talked about context. We're going to see more of that today. So a lot of the things that were covered in chapters 1 and 2, in the chapters 3 and 4 that we're going to cover today, you're going to see a lot of that, but in different ways, in kind of more of a workflow. So we're going to do the workflow section first, and that's going to be all about, how do you do code reviews, or I want to refactor this code, or I want to generate tests. I want to debug. It's extremely good at all these things. I use it all the time. In fact, I don't know about you, Chris, but on a given day, I'm kind of feeling like, man, Dan, you're getting a little lazy, because I'll just take the log of like an error, dump it into the CLI, and let it just tell me how to fix it. Do you happen to do the same thing, Chris, or is it just me?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you, right? And I think laziness is a very good quality with developers. I'm sure you've heard this story about the developer spending 40 hours to solve a task. They spend 39 hours to actually write a script and then 1 hour to run it. And that to me is the typical developer, right? So laziness is a good thing. That's what I've been taught.
That's what you've been taught. All right, I'm going to go with that. So in the second half of today, we're going to go into built-in agents, and we're going to talk about how you can add your own custom agents into the mix here. And again, if you just joined us a little bit late, you can go to this one of these links here. I'm going to be using this top one to actually show you what we're going to cover. So with that, let me jump right over. And if you go to the gh.io, in fact, you'll see the long version, the link right there. I'm going to review just really quickly again, in case you didn't come yesterday, we are covering the CLI. So this is your in-terminal experience. There are other options though. In VS Code, for example, I can open this little bubble up top and I could use the GitHub Copilot and all the AI cool stuff right here. That's another option that we could do. Works extremely well. The reason Chris and I kind of prefer the CLI way is because I'm always running a Python command or a Node command, or I do .NET as well. So it just depends on what we're working on. So, .NET run or something like that. And with the CLI, you're already in the console. So it just works really well for that. But it's not the only option. So just kind of keep that in mind. All right. Now with that, if you are brand new to this, in the course, we do have this quick start where it'll walk you through installing it, logging in, all that type of stuff. Once that's done, you literally type Copilot and you're in. All right. So that's the quick review from yesterday. Now, I'm going to go ahead and store my session data for everything I'm going to do in my account so I can get to it on any machine that way. Makes it nice. And we're going to be kind of off and running here. So, all right. So today we're going to jump right into development workflows. And I think this is something that is probably very common and hopefully useful to all of you, because I know for Chris and I, this is how we spend a lot of our days, is this type of stuff. So what we're going to do is talk about how we can do things like code reviews. What if I need to refactor code? Could be old legacy code. One thing the CLI is great at is modernizing apps. I have an old app. It's on an old machine. Maybe it's on-prem, and I want to get it off. I want to move it somewhere else, and I want to modernize. I want to make it, modern version of the framework. Debugging. It's excellent at that, and generating tests and all this. So if you were to think of it like this, from a carpenter standpoint or a builder standpoint, if they're going to build some furniture, they're going to measure it, and then they're going to cut it and assemble it and then apply the finish, right? They have a workflow. And we, of course, as developers have very similar workflows. It's all digital, I guess. But if you're going to, fix something, bugs, for example, you assess it, you remove whatever the problem is, do that repair, and then hopefully it matches up with what you have in the code. And then you have your quality check, your tests and things like that you would do. So very analogous to what we do. And I would argue there's generally 5 workflows that we as developers are doing probably almost daily. Some of you maybe your job is just testing though. So maybe you don't do all these other workflows. Maybe you don't do the testing. Maybe you hand that off to another team if you're in a bigger company or something like that. But from the standpoint of what do, you probably do these things. So code reviews, refactor code, debug it, generate tests, and then we have to integrate with Git, of course, and probably push that up to a GitHub repo. So Chris and I yesterday, and I'll reach out to Chris here on this, from a code review standpoint, I view this as more important than ever in the AI world. And so, Chris, I know we talked a little bit about it yesterday, but from a code review standpoint, how often do you run code reviews if the CLI generates code for you and stuff like that?
So I would say that I run it quite often, right? Because you get this first draft from the agent and immediately you want to make sure that the architecture is correct. And then I have moments where I run reviews like, before I ship it. So for example, security review, right? So there's a lot of great angles that kind of fits under the review umbrella. I don't know about you, Dan. Do you have similar angles to your review process, or?
Yeah. And a lot of times for me, the review depends on what it is too. Because again, it might be testing, and I might spend the time to say, okay, you like all these great tests are in place. How many of them are actually relevant though? Because, you'll see like 50 of 50 pass because it generated a whole bunch of tests. But then I'll spend the time to go through, okay, which of these are actually hitting and that we care about? Because, if it's hard coding 2 + 2 and you get back 4, I'm going to argue that's not that useful of a test, right? Or are we hitting all the edge cases? That's another question I'll ask. And I'll show you some of this, folks, as we dive right in here. What are other edge cases that we haven't, I say we in this case, me and the CLI, haven't actually worried about yet that we should worry about? All right. So that's a pretty big one. Refactoring is huge because once I do a code review, and I'm sure you do the same thing, Chris, I'll then be like, okay, yeah, that's not great. Let's refactor it. And, let's fix this up. So we assess the code, we plan the changes. I think we're all dealing with debugging. It's very good at helping with that. In fact, if you do front end work at all, let's say you're doing React or Angular or Lit or something like that, it's even good. You can give it what's in the browser. And there's even a way you can hook it to the browser, which we haven't covered MCP yet, but we will next week. But at a bare minimum, I can paste in the code from the browser and say, here's what I'm seeing with this code, and generally get back a pretty good solution for the most part. Now, sometimes you have to coach it. Obviously, that's the case with all AI agents, but works really well. Test generation is one. Chris, I don't know about you, but I've always been a proponent of it. Like, I love having unit tests. I especially love having end-to-end tests, like playwright tests, things like that. But I don't know about you. I can't say that I probably generated as many tests as I probably should have in the past when I had to write them from scratch. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So totally. I would say this. We came, I think, both of us from a culture where we did no tests at all to doing a lot of tests. And then we tried to figure out, okay, what tests do we actually need, right? So I think it's less about a lot of tests, but more like, do we have the right test in the right places? Because we have some test situations that are more gnarly than others, right? So one thing we tend to skip is like a simple end-to-end test, right? One of my favorite things here is like, have you seen this image of the Titanic? And they just showcase everywhere. It's like passing unit test. And then you kind of miss the whole image of a sinking ship.
That's the edge case.
Right, exactly. That to me illustrates that the focus should be on the right test and not necessarily 100% coverage or having 100 tests. If I got 5 that covers me, then I'm going to sleep well.
Exactly. I'm with you 100% on that. It's not so much about the quantity as the quality, and do they hit the edge cases and things like that. So, all right. So what we're going to do is we won't have time to run every single one of these because we only have an hour and we have 2 chapters to get through today. But we are going to go through some of these and kind of show you some things. So just one more time, I'm going to run back. And just in case you just joined us a little bit later here this morning and you're wondering, where is all this that we're talking about? Here's the link again, gh.io/copilot-cli-course. And I'll give everybody a sec to just go to that if you want to. And so now we're going to jump right in and let's look at some of these workflows and what the CLI can do for us. And we'll kind of review some stuff from yesterday in the process. All right. So running on back, which this is funny, Chris, I literally about 30 minutes ago did an update. There's already an update. So I could literally do this, folks. This is a / command for those that didn't join us yesterday and maybe haven't used it. I could say /update here and grab it. I'm not going to tempt fate because we only have an hour here. But anyway, that's very funny because I literally just updated this morning. But let's jump to code reviews here. And what you're going to see in this course on chapter 3 is that you'll have these expandable areas for refactoring and code reviews and all that. So let's go to code review. And let's do a basic review. And as a reminder from yesterday, in the repo for the Copilot CLI for Beginners course, we have different samples. So we have C#, JavaScript, and Python. We're going to be worrying about the Python ones today, but you could run these against the C# or JavaScript, of course. Worked very well. But anyway, in the samples, you'll see this book app project. We also have a buggy one, which has like some really bad code in there. And that's what we're going to be looking at as I run some of these prompts. So the first one, let me just grab this guy right here. We're going to go in and just kind of review, and I'm going to show you a little bit later, there is a very explicit review command you can do, but this can also be invoked just by telling it, do a review. So I'm going to say review as samples, book app project, book app py. And again, that's going to get us back into what I just showed you. Here's our book app project, and there's book app py right there. Okay. And what we're asking it here, obviously, is just, hey, take a look at the code quality. Now, super basic, right? There's a lot more we could ask about, but it's a good start. So let's run it, and we'll kick this process off here. And while this is running, again, for those that might not have seen this already yesterday, there's also a see it in action down below these. So if you don't even want to run it and you just want to kind of see what it does, we have these sections here also that you can expand and kind of see what's going on. So going back here, you'll notice, Chris, look what it's doing. It's thinking, right? Mm-hmm. And we're using Cloud Sonnet 4.6 here. You might use Opus 4.6, maybe GPT 5.4. You know, we could switch as another review. We could switch the model with /model. But let's let it run here. And let's look at what it's doing. So first off, it looks like it invokes something called a skill. Okay. We're going to talk about skills officially next week. But these are like specialized checklists, you could say. Oh, specialized knowledge. The way I like to think of skills is if you ever saw the movie The Matrix and you need to go fly like a helicopter, you know, you just plug the skill in and boom, you know how to fly a helicopter. That's kind of what a skill is. It's reading. So we're doing a tool here to read bookapp.py. This is a tool call. It's searching, checking if functions are tested, things like that. And then here's the report. So we have a fail, missing type hints on all the functions. Okay. And if you do Python at all, you'll know about that. These are all pretty good. We don't have good input validation, and we actually ran some of this yesterday. So I'm glad to see, Chris, this matches up pretty well with what we saw. But how cool is that it literally gave me priorities, medium, low, another medium, like it's saying we don't have a unit test for some of these. And now I can actually go in and have some actionable items to work on. Really, really helpful. So if we keep moving on down here, we also have one called utils.py. So let me just run this one as well. We'll paste that in. And just as a reminder, anytime you see the @ symbol, in case you haven't seen this yet, that is telling the CLI, I want to add that file, and you could add multiple files. You can do multiple ats. I want to add that file or folder into the context. Okay. So I want to make it aware of that file, in other words. So let's run this one as well. And you'll notice we're asking for input validation issues, missing validation, error handling gaps, and edge cases. I probably wrote that part because I'm very fond of saying, what are we missing on edge cases? Because from a developer standpoint, you know, it's easy to miss that. All right, it's already going. It's really quick. So missing validation, we got a lot of issues there, it looks like. Title and author are never checked for empty strings. Year 0 is a silent fallback for probably the publish year, I'm guessing, of the book. Error handling gaps. And we get a nice table here. Edge cases not handled. We got a lot of work here, folks. Chris did not write this, obviously, because if Chris wrote this, it would have been rock solid. We wouldn't have all these issues. So Now, obviously, some of this we put in on purpose because we wanted to catch a few things. All right, so 5 issues need attention. Most impactful are the missing empty string guards. So, all right, so I think we've seen enough to know that, first off, this is being very helpful in identifying what do we need to work on to make this code better, right? And so whether you wrote this code on your own, or Chris wrote it, or the CLI wrote it, or another tool, maybe you used ChatGPT, who knows? We can see that it's really good at catching these, like, you should have thought of this and this and this, and doing a code review. All right, so I also want to point out that as you're doing this, and as you're doing the @ you can also say, like, notice in this case, we give it the entire project folder. So let's say you had a repo, maybe it's a mono repo, where you have multiple packages that you're building out for work. You could give it the whole folder if you wanted and say, review that. That way you don't have to type every single file and do all that. So that's kind of what this is showing right here. All right, so there's even more you can do on running these. I'm going to kind of leave it at that because we have an hour. So what I want to do now is, let's see, could we fix and refactor some of this? So obviously, the answer is yes. We could assess the code and plan the changes and then implement those. Now, we already have all this. Let's go back up to the table here. And in fact, I'll just hit the up arrow here. I'll show you a little trick you can do in a second. But in this table, let's say we want to add type hints, for example. Let's just start simple, and we'll do step by step. So if I hit the up arrow here, see how I can actually go back. Now it's hitting the @ but let me go over here a little further. See how I can go back to my previous prompts I ran? Okay, really nice way to kind of say, what was it I typed earlier? And the reason I'm going to do that is we already have this book app project, bookapp.py. Instead of review, I'm going to say in, and I'm just going to not even use what's in the course. I'm going to make this up as we go here. We need to add type hints to all functions. Let's see, what else do we need? Let's just do these first 2 to start. Also, add validation for title and author. We don't want empty strings. All right, let's just let this run and kind of see what happens here. Kind of a pro tip, and having worked with these a lot, and I'm sure you'll agree here, Chris, I'll let you give your thoughts. Rather than tackling every single thing in that list, oftentimes I find it's better to just grab a smaller subset of it, get that working, and then I'll ask it, okay, we just fixed this, what's next? And then it'll actually spit out the next parts of the table if you ask it, because that's all in the context. Chris, do you do something similar, or do you like to just say, do it all?
Honestly, it depends on what I'm working on. If I'm working on something very small, I think it's okay to do, review and fix. But if it's a big thing, right, so then it's super easy that it messes things up. So it's important to work in a granular way and kind of stop and think, in my experience, right? So because if you just say review all the things, fix all the things, you end up with broken code or maybe a suboptimal solution. So yeah, I would definitely do this step by step, and even sometimes think, do I need to fix this now, or should I be creating issues on my repo even, right? Because it's great at creating these, and it's just one more prompt to.
Yep.
I don't know if you heard.
Sorry, I heard you.
I
lost you there, Chris.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks. I think.
No, I would say.
Could be bandwidth on my side, but yeah, you're cutting out, unfortunately. So. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's move on here, because it might have just been a temporary blip in a network somewhere in the world. But what I want to show you now is, and I agree with everything Chris said. If it's a smaller thing like that list I showed you in the table above, I think we probably could have tackled it, to be honest. But if it's a larger subset of things, then yeah, I like to be more granular, as Chris mentioned. So. Okay, so let's do this. You're going to notice first off, it's prompting me, is it okay to make these edits? All right, so first off, it came into here, and notice now we have none, all right, as the value here, or the type, I should say, that we're going to get back. So do you want to edit the book app Pi? Yes, one time, or do you want to allow it for multiple operations? Now, a lot of times, if I know I'm going to be working with that file a lot, I'll go ahead and select the second one. Or I could even tell it, do something different. And you can actually type in here to tell it what to do different. Now, let's go ahead and say, yeah, let's do yes. And notice that it now tells us there is a diff. In fact, I'll show you, we can even run a diff, or we could come over to our, our git changes over here, but let's let it run. And let's see what happens here. Now, while this is going, I want to cover a couple things from yesterday that also apply here. So recall that you can go in and do model, and there are cases where I might change it. So for example, I've lately, and this is very subjective, but lately I found that GPT-5.4 has helped me a little bit more with some of, like, if I'm doing front end layout visual stuff, I found that it's actually really good at that. In fact, I kind of like it better than Opus in some cases. Now, you can try both. So if I just hit model here, I'll let it finish. I could do it, but it's almost done, I suspect. I could change the model. And so keep in mind, you're not limited to just one thing. I think it's all done, and we'll go look at it. But I could go in and change to these guys. So maybe I want to go to GPT-5.4 or maybe the mini for whatever reason. So kind of keep that in mind, that you're not locked into just one model for whatever the task is you're doing. Some models I find work better for some things, so I'll switch. All right, so it said type hints were added to all 7 functions, empty string validation added. Let's go take a look at what it did here. And so I'm going to kind of just minimize that a little bit. And let's scroll down on the right. You can see all the changes. All right, there's our validation right there. And then you can see we have all the type hints. They were pretty simple. You can see it just added none in pretty much all those because it's a CLI app. All right, but that's not bad. That's a good start. Kind of kicks things off for us. All right. So moving onward and upward, that is like a really easy way to dive right in, review your code, refactor your code, do all those types of things. Now, I also want to show, if we go in, there's actually a diff command. Review the changes made in the current directory. And I can actually review those right here if I'd like. All right, that's kind of cool. Right? Don't even have to jump over to the git changes. I can just do it right here in the CLI. And now I could, not even leave it at all. I'm in VS Code right now, but I could just be in a terminal window and I could still see everything that's going on. So super cool. I'm gonna hit escape to get out of that. So that was, again, just diff is how you can see your the diffs that it's made. All right. So moving onward and upward, let's talk about debugging. I think something we all spend a lot of time doing in our apps. Let's go in and let's do this one right here. And so it says that in a book app buggy, okay, we have a buggy version of it. Users report that searching for The Hobbit returns no results, even though it's in the data. Debug why. Okay, let's have it take a shot at that. See what we can get here. So with debugging, the more context you can give it, the better. Anytime I have logs, anytime I have obviously error messages from the UI, screenshots, you can paste in screenshots and say, hey, take a look at this screenshot. Here's the error I'm getting. Now, notice this is already telling us, right away it said, found it. The bug is on line 53, which I'm going to have to admit, to this day, even though I've been doing this for quite a while now, when I see those kind of things, I'm still like, it's like super cool that it found it that quick, because I would have taken longer to find it. Let's face it. So it's pretty neat. So bug number one, it looks like it's a case sensitive exact match. Okay, so insensitive comparison would be the fix. So obviously, if we would have typed like lowercase The Hobbit, it probably would have worked. But we typed uppercase The Hobbit, didn't work. So it tells us, all right. So I'm going to come on down and say, all right, let's fix that bug. And that's all I got to say, because again, everything that it just showed us is in the context. And so now we can let it go off and fix it. And this should be pretty quick here. All right. So it's kicking in the tools. Oh, okay. Now, yeah, that's right. So I can't fix that bug per this project's guidelines. Don't fix bugs in samples buggy code. Now, let me show you what's going on here. The reason this is in here is we have something called Agents.markdown. All right. And somewhere in this file, here we go. There's a don't section. And I'm going to have to admit, I kind of forgot I put that in there, but yep. Don't fix bugs here. They're intentional because we want you to go through and find the bugs, but I don't want to check those in accidentally, right? Because it's supposed to be buggy. That is super cool, actually, because I kind of forgot I put that there, but it read agents and went, wait a second, you said don't fix that project. And now you're telling me fix it. So now notice I have some options here. Yes, check and fix the real app. Or I could give it other instructions like ignore that, just do it. You know, that would be an option. If you're not familiar, let's talk about Agents.markdown real quick. And do you want to give just a real quick summary, Chris, of kind of what it's all about?
Yeah, totally. So Agents Markdown is that first file that your agent find. And the way I see it is that it's for high level instructions. What you mentioned there, do's and don'ts for your repo, but it's also an excellent opportunity to present what this repo is about, right? So I think your agent picked up on that earlier where it said this is, purely for education. There's some don't instructions, there's some do's instructions. I think for other agents, this is called Codecmd, right? If you're using Claude, for example. Yep. But what I mean to say is that this is your bare minimum that you should fill in for every repo. And the good news is, of course, that we can go back to Copilot and ask that it fills it in based on what you see in the repo already. So here's another opportunity for you to be lazy, but don't forget about this file.
Yeah. Yeah. And every repo I create these days, I put an Agents.markdown, and I'll literally go in and say, based upon the code and scripts, let's say, in this project, create an agents dot, well, it's capital, but it doesn't really matter. It'll know that file. And then you can actually have it generated. Now, while we're here, let me just show you another thing you can do. Let me just get rid of that. If we type a init, we can initialize some Copilot specific instructions. Okay. Now I'm not going to run that right now, but you can actually initialize it with, hey, here's my project. Now go initialize it and create some files that every time we run Copilot, it can read, kind of like it did with Agents.markdown there. It can read that and apply rules and policies and whatever it is your team has for that repo. So that's another thing you can do there. All right, so cool. So yeah, anyway, that nice little segue there, because I kind of forgot I put that, to be honest, but it caught me. Yet another good reason to use these kind of tools, though, because it'll catch things that you haven't worked with for like a month or two and go, hey, what about this? All right. Now, that is debugging, so there's a lot more we can do. Now, the last one, though, I want to get into, because, again, we just have limited time today, is test generation. So let me grab this guy. And we have this books.py, but I'm saying generate Pytest tests, say that 10 times, for all functions, including, there's my edge cases again. Like I told you, I'm always looking for edge cases. Now, something I could do here that we talked about yesterday, if I go to /context, I can see my context. Now, notice my messages here. It's only 10K. It's not a big deal. It's very minimal. In fact, most of my context is taken up by some of the stuff I have installed and that's in this project. And right now we have tons of room left, 45% free space before we hit the buffer area. And for those that weren't here yesterday, just think of this as like a window. These circles here, that's the stuff that's filled up in the window. These dots are what's left. So I can still shove more in. Okay, but because I'm going to start a new task here, which is going to be test generation, I'm going to go in and say new. Now, what that will do, there's kind of two options here. You can also do clear. Clear is throw out everything we've done. Forget it. Just ignore that session entirely. New is, okay, I kind of like what we did. I might want to get to it at some point, but I want a new session now. Okay, so clear is kind of throw it out. New is keep what we have. I'll do new here. It doesn't, either one would work. Now let's go to context again. Now see what happened? See how we have much more in the window now. Now, another reason that's useful though, is because sometimes if it has too much info that's unrelated to the task you're going to run, it just confuses it sometimes. All right. And this is the case. It doesn't matter if it's Claude Code or Copilot CLI or Codex or Open Code. It's the same for all these. You want to keep the context as specific to the task as possible. So a lot of times I will do /clear /new before I start a new task. Now, having said that, let's go ahead and do the new task now. Oh, I copied that apparently. Didn't mean to. Let's go back to here, grab this guy, and run it. And I'll tell you, this is one of the most awesome things you can do because I'll admit, back in the old days, unit tests I was okay doing. End-to-end tests, I love having end-to-end tests. The challenge with end-to-end tests, though, is that if you're doing like Playwright and other things, there's a lot more work involved to get it right. And so you spend time going, okay, nope, that was the wrong DOM selector because I needed to find something in the DOM or whatever it may be. Or that was the wrong API call because it's an end-to-end. It's a real test, right? And with Copilot CLI, in fact, I have a real project. It's a personal project I'm working on that over the weekend, I just spent less than an hour, maybe an hour and a half or so, generating these end-to-end tests for a payment scenario with Stripe. And because I'm like paranoid about, I don't want a payment issue with this product idea. And so the CLI caught all these edge cases, said, you should check this. You should check this. What happens if the hook doesn't work when the payment comes back? And so now I have this really nice end-to-end thing going on. So all that to say, what it's going to generate here is going to be pretty minimal. We're going to kind of let it run here, but super, super useful. And you can also generate end-to-end tests as well. All right. Now, while this is running, I'm going to show you one more thing. A lot of you are like generating tests or refactoring code or, the dev workflow that we've been talking about, but you need to generate a PR, right? Well, the GitHub tools are built into the Copilot CLI. And so I don't have much going. In a second here, we should have at least 2 files once it's done generating all the Pytest and things. But what's really cool is I could literally come in and say, create a PR for the current Git changes. Now, this guy's running right now. So what I'm going to do, rather than kind of sidetrack it here, is let me just fire up another terminal window. And as soon as my shell loads, we'll do Copilot again. Now, I want to show you one more thing here. If you're on a project, you notice how it keeps prompting me, do you want to do this? Yes, no. Do you want to do this? Yes, no. If you're in a project that you trust the code, you trust the tools that are being run on it, and you just want it to just run, then when I start Copilot, I can do this. YOLO. Basically, allow all tools. Now, this is one that make sure you trust it, because if it's not trusted, this would not be good because it's just going to run and assume that you trust it. But what's really cool about YOLO mode is that you don't get prompted to say, yes, do this, yes, do this. You will for this first part. I'll do that. But now I could say, create a PR for the Git changes that I currently have here, something like that. Now, what can happen is, notice I'm on the main branch down here. And now normally you'd probably fork it and then, create a branch and then go to the fork and then push the PR over. You don't technically have to, though. It's smart enough that it can actually get you on a different branch, create a PR, even give you a link to the PR, and then you go to the repo, or you could do it from here, and you could commit it if you have rights to do that. So notice all these tools are kicking in here. It's determining, like, what would the summary message be for the PR? And so this is kind of the next part. The Git integration is amazing. So notice it's going to create a branch because it's going, you're on main. Look at my branch now. So I'm on add type annotations and input validations branch. It switched me because it knows you're not going to do a PR from my main. Now it's pushing the branch. It's creating the PR. And in just a sec, it'll probably give us a link to the PR, which I will promptly close because we don't want this one. All right, and there we go. There we go, right there. There's the link to it, which I can actually click on to get to it, you'll see. And then it should be up there in the repo now. In fact, here, let's go look. I probably have some bot ones in here as well. Okay, never mind. I don't want to go through that, so I'm going to go through it a different way. Hold on. Give me a sec. Let me open in this other browser and I'll drag it over. And it's going to make me re-log in. All right, let me log in here. Just one second. There we go. All right, let me get out of full screen mode so I can drag it. Bring this guy over. And here we go. So there it is right there. There's my PR. And, now I'd have to review it and all that stuff. Now I'm going to promptly close this guy because I don't want it, but that's a real PR on that repo that I could do right there through GitHub Copilot. Like, how cool is that? Pretty cool. All right. So with that, there's an example of working with PRs and that kind of workflow. Let me just go back to main and let's exit out of this one. And hopefully the other one is about done now. Okay, now remember, this wasn't in YOLO mode, so it's actually waiting on me. So I'm going to let it run and we'll come back to it later maybe so we can move on. But now it says you want to run Pytest on the new test file. Yeah, sure. Let's go ahead and let it do its thing. Okay, so I hope that gives everybody a pretty good idea about the overall workflow and what you can do. And here's what it generated. Notice, in fact, this should be right here. Look at all this. All right, now is it good? I don't know. Now we can review it. We can say, did you hit the edge cases? All those types of things. But amazing. Chris, I think we're off to a good start there at least, right?
Yeah, I agree. We had someone here asking about the YOLO mode because they're a bit worried that it might change some OS settings and things like that. I was thinking to myself that, maybe I have an instruction in Agents.md that says, don't do this or don't do that, right? But even then, I'd be like, how much do I want to use this YOLO mode versus not maybe using it? So
exactly.
Any thoughts on that then?
Yeah. First off, what you just said, Chris, is what I would do. Give it rules up front, because as you saw, it does read that agents markdown or the custom Copilot instructions. Number two, I wouldn't, especially if you're new to this, I would not start with that. I wanted to show you that, yes, there is a way you can get around being asked every time. Like, I came back and it said, do you want to run these tests? And that's actually good. Notice 53 of 53 passed, by the way. And so it actually shows me the test suites and I didn't even do anything, folks. Like, how amazing is that? So the bottom line here is I would not start with the YOLO mode, but it is there. So if it is something you trust very highly, then you can certainly do that. if you wanted. But okay, so we've covered a lot of ground, but we have agents still, Chris. So I think we're going to move on to the last thing. But any other questions, Chris, that came in that we want to go over before we switch gears here?
I think some of these questions are probably leaning into agents and the customizations and instructions. So I think it's just a good time to get started with that chapter.
Okay, cool. Well, let's move on then. So the last chapter we're going to cover today, and I hope everybody gets a really good idea about, like, from a developer workflow standpoint, you're covered. You can do pretty much anything you can think of, from testing to PRs to refactors to reviews, all kinds of stuff. Now, let me go ahead and I'm going to do a clear on this one. And I don't need this guy, so I'm just going to move that guy out of here. And now we're going to jump into chapter 4. And this is all about, you'll see a summary up here, like, what if you could hire a Python or C# or Java, code reviewer, testing expert, and security reviewer all in one tool? You can create your own custom agents, and you can use the built-in ones. Now, yesterday, we talked about something called plan mode. And I'm just going to show that again really quickly. And when I type /plan, this will actually switch me into plan mode, it's called. All right. In fact, this is kind of hiding it because it thinks there's this update. But I can now say, I need to add a new feature, blah, 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 and give it the details. It's not going to write any code. What it will do is help you think through the plan so that you can go in and actually do your work here. So there we go. There's plan mode. There's regular mode, interactive mode, we call it. Okay. Now, we covered that one yesterday, but I just wanted to show you that, yes, plan mode is there. It is amazing. I use it literally almost every day because I do a lot of planning. Now, there is also, I mentioned this earlier, a /review. Now, you could also type, like we did earlier, do a code review on blah, 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 right? That actually, under the covers, can invoke this guy. And this is called an agent. All right? Plan is an agent. What is an agent? It's a specialist. Now, let me give you an overview here that's a little more visual. In fact, there's... you'll see agent.markdown, but that's a different one, not agents.markdown. So if you had a leak at your house or apartment, or you have an electrical problem, let's say it's a water leak, you're probably not going to call the electrician, right? I mean, I don't know, maybe your electrician's great and also does plumbing, but you're going to call a specialist. We had a new roof put on our house. It's actually been a couple of years ago, but, we want the best roofing company, right, to put that roof on, because they specialize in that. Like, that's what they do. Well, that's what agents are. They're specialists. And if we go down to this visual here, you don't call one general helper. We have I don't know what they call them all around the world, but here in the States, we call them a handyman. Handyman's kind of like can do it all, but a lot of times the handyman we work with, he'll be like, you probably should call the plumber or the electrician on that one, because it's really specialized. So an agent, like a code review, a security reviewer, a testing reviewer or runner, a documentation generator, these all could be specialists that are agents. And while there's some built in, like plan mode, review mode, and others, there's a task agent, things like that, you can write your own. And so we're going to kind of look at that. So agents, Copilot CLI, Chris, I would argue, is an agent of sorts, right? Has an agentic loop. But it can have specialized agents like /review. And now we already did some code reviews, so I'm not going to do it again, but I could also do, review the entire project and give me a table of fixes that are high priority. Ignore the little stuff, just give me the high priority stuff. We could totally do that with the /review. Really nice. Or I already showed you plan mode. as an example. So with plan mode, that is using an agent, as I mentioned. Review, that is using an agent. So here's just a quick list of some of the built-in agents. So I've already shown you plan and review. Init, we briefly talked about. This is how we can init, and we can actually give it some starter markdown files that, just like the agents.markdown, we could give it some rules. Do this, don't do this, all those type of things. And that is something that's also technically an agent for instructions. Pretty cool. Explore, summarize this code base and give me the top 3 things it does. And then because I didn't tell it where to go. So we could go tell it at, and let's go to sample / and let's go down and do let's do the C# one, actually. Let's let that run in the background and just, now under the covers, that's kind of an explorer. So it can invoke a specialized agent under the covers that explores the code and does all that. And then when it needs to run tasks, that's another built-in agent. There's a task agent that executes command like the tasks. So there you go. Here's my top 3 things it does. Looks like it's got 2 of them. It's working on the 3rd. There we go. So manages a personal book collection via the CLI, persists data to data.json, and finds books by author. It's a pretty simple app. Okay. Those are all built in. And Chris, I don't know about you, but I can do a lot of cool stuff just with those. Would you agree? If that's all I used, like you could do a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I mean, it's pretty nicely set up as it is, right? It has all this basic functionality, but I think you come to a point where you feel like, oh, these are great, but I just wish I could do more or specialize because my companies has this or that rule, or maybe have these other things in mind. So yeah, I agree. These are a great foundation, and let's learn to master these, but there's more, right, Dan?
Yep, there is more. There's always more. By next week, there will probably be even more because as you can see, like I said, like 30 minutes before we started, I just did an update and there's already an update. So lots of cool stuff always coming out. All right. So I'm going to scroll on down here and let's talk about, these cool agents. This looks like some game we're going to play maybe, Chris. But so this is an example of a agent. This is an extremely minimal agent, but it's an agent. We have my reviewer. That's the name. We have a description. The description is extremely important because when you're working with agents, it needs to have metadata about what is this agent for and what should it be doing and all that type of stuff. And then all it says is you're a code reviewer focused on finding bugs and security issues. Always look for SQL injection, missing error handling, hard-coded secrets. That would be an agent. Now, that's a super basic one, obviously. Now, where do these go, though, and how would you invoke them? Let's look at one that's already here for you that's down in the chapter. Well, if we go into the GitHub folder here, .github, you're going to notice that I have a agents folder. Now, we have a Hello World agent. Let's open that real quick. And take a look at this real fast. It's called Hello World. A minimal agent example responds with friendly, encouraging messages. You're a friendly assistant who responds with encouraging messages. It's useless. But we could actually come in and look when I type the / here, Hello World, that's a skill though, you'll notice. So how would I get to this agent? Because we also have a skills folder. Okay, there's Hello World down there. But here's how you get to your custom agents. First off, they need to be either in this folder or there is a .copilot folder that's at the user level. All right, and this is all in the chapter. In fact, we'll probably see the folder path in a moment here when I scroll down. But if I want to invoke one of these guys, here's what I do. You type /agent. Now, look what I have here. Now, some of these are installed, all right, but others, here's Hello World. What else do we have in here? Pytest helper, that should be in here somewhere. There's Pytest helper. We have Python reviewer agent. There's that one. Let's go to hello world. And now I'm just going to say, tell me about yourself. All right, this should be interesting because all it does is has a positive greeting. But now I'm actually running, hey there, great to meet you. Yes, very positive. I'm now running with that agent. In fact, notice down here, see what it shows me with the @ I'm using specifically that agent's overall bubble, if you will, right now. All right, so that's kind of cool. Now, if I want to switch, we could just say agent, and we could go back to default. Now we're back to where we were, okay, if we wanted. Let's go back to agent. We could come down, and there's I have a code reviewer. This is a big one. This is a real one, but let's go down to this guy, Python reviewer. Now, let's open it up and take a look here. So this has a little more. It has a name. It's a Python code quality specialist for reviewing Python projects. Okay, pretty clear. It has specific tools it's allowed to use. It can read, it can edit, it can search. Okay, there's different tool sets you can add. Don't have to, but nice to have. And then notice we have some details here. We have expertise, style compliance with PEP 8, error handling patterns, file IO, JSON handling, coding standards, and this is still really basic. It's just a demo, right? But now we could come in, and I'm on Python reviewer now, right? I already, again, I went into agent, went down. Actually, it's up there. I'm gonna say deselect. Let me start over here. So, all right, perfect. Now let's go back into agent, and now we'll go back into Python reviewer. All right, review this code base. Now, this time, and that's a horrible prompt, I admit, but in the interest of time, this is now going to go in and all these rules that you would have in your agent. So let's imagine as a team, you come up with a kind of master list of all the things you want to check. I mean, you might even have external resources that need to get pulled in, as an example. You could totally do that. Can you imagine how great that is as a team to have that consistency now to, hey, every time Chris makes a change or I make a change, we're going to be consistent because we're both going to use the same agent. Now, notice it's already caught some things. It has some high. And why did it do high this time? See the high there? See right here? When reviewing code, prioritize critical, high, medium, and that's where that came from. It came from the actual agent itself. And it looks like it's done. I heard, you might not be able to hear it. There's a little ding. There's a little thing called hooks you can do. And so I have a little sound set up that when it's done, it goes ding, so that I kind of know it's done. Because a lot of times this runs and I'm walking over here and I'm going to go play Pac-Man. I wish everybody asked, do I get to play this much? I don't, unfortunately. I'm just too busy. But, and then I hear ding and then I come back. And I'm like, okay, cool. So here's a medium, here's a high. But notice this is so much more specific now, right? Because, Chris created this, let's say, for the team. He checked it into the project. Or you could use this at the user level, so it applies to all projects. Super, super cool. So it's a specialist. It's like an electrician. It's like a plumber. It's a specialist. So moving on down to kind of wrap up, remember I told you about the folders? This is where the ones we're using in the course store it. But you could also store them in a more global location for your machine. And that is this .copilot. So it's basically root of the user account, .copilot agents. And so if I wanted these guys to be available on every project, then we could do that. We could totally do that. All right. So there's the course, I've already kind of shown everything, but the /agent is kind of the magic here. Now, again, to kind of get out of it, if you go back to /agent, see the deselect current agent. Or switch, to another one. That's kind of how you can say, yeah, I want to get out of that mode or whatever here. All right. So I hope that gives everybody a pretty good idea about an agent is a specialist. It's really just a markdown file. And is there more you can do? Yeah, there's always more you can do. But Chris, I don't know. How much do you use agents at all?
Oh, I use them quite a lot. And I just wanted to call out what I really loved about the agent you showed me was two things. The tools on the top, right? Because most of the time I define a researcher agent that gets to go out on the web and fetch things and, research. But I could also give it like extended rights if I need this agent to go in and fix things, right? So I just love the fact that you can add or remove whatever tools you need. And my other call out would be what you specified at the bottom, in which you actually came up with your own custom labels for, severities. Because I think there was one initial question at the start of this. How did you get those labels? So either you go with the default or you select an agent. And if you got specific labels for your company, here's where you would add those labels. So yeah, I just think this was a really good, good example of how to build an agent.
Cool. So I would encourage you all, we'll kind of wrap up here because we're at time now, but in the chapter, both chapters, all the chapters, we have assignments right here at the bottom. So kind of the homework, if you have, time and if you really want to dive in, and I'll be real honest, if you were to go through this course and go through the challenges and the assignments and all that, you will have a very good idea about how productive you can be. And I'll be honest, I love, we used to always hear about a 10x developer, 100x developer. I like to think that was me back in my younger years, maybe, I don't know, who knows. But now I truly feel like this tool has made it where, because I don't just have one of these running, by the way, a lot of times I'll have multiple things running in multiple tabs on different projects and things. Because a lot of these tasks I'm doing aren't quite as simple as we did today. They're a little longer, running oriented. And so productivity wise, it's just amazing what you can get done now. Now, I mentioned this yesterday and I'll wrap up with this. The most important thing I think that gets ignored in all this AI stuff going on in the world right now is how important it is for us as developers, or if your skill is testing, for example, to really know your craft, your skill. As I mentioned yesterday, and I'll say it again today, I think it's more important than ever, actually, that you're really good at knowing your architecture information, your frameworks you work with, your languages, your domain of, your security, all that stuff, because yes, it can help you generate a lot of code. That doesn't mean it's the code you want to run, though, in production. And no matter how many of these code reviews you do through this, you still need to be on top of it. So, Chris, do you have any final thoughts there on that angle?
Yeah, totally. I just wanted to finish this with answering a very good question we have from a person here that says, what's the difference between agents and skills? And I thought to try to answer that, but I'd love to hear your input also. So a skill for me is like a recipe, right? It tells me how to bake a cake. So it's a repeatable pattern. Instead of just YOLOing everything and hoping for the best, that the agent will actually do things in the right order. So a skill is just A, B, C, D in that order, right? Whereas an agent can reason and it can orchestrate and even talk to other agents. So I see agents as more of a high level being, if that makes sense, right? Whereas skills are things that the agents would use. I don't know if you agree with that description. But
I do. Yeah, I think of skills as almost like a checklist. Like if I was going to be an expert at flying a helicopter, what would I need to know? Check. And how'd you word it, Chris? I don't think you said checklist. You said, what did you say?
I think I said recipe. I think of it like baking a cake.
Same thing. In fact, I like recipe even better. Excellent question. Looks like Rodrigo asked that. So excellent question. Yeah. So as Chris said, it's like a recipe. Here's the good news. Next Wednesday, actually, Chris and I are going to cover this 8 a.m. Pacific again. So if you're watching the videos but didn't sign up, in fact, there you go. All right, Anna's she's on top of it for us. So yeah, go to the link that is on your screen there, and you can sign up, because next week Chris and I are going to cover skills and we're going to cover MCP. integration with the CLI? So excellent question. And I think, Chris, I totally agree. You did a good summary there, I think. So, all right. Well, that is a wrap, folks. And I really appreciate your time sticking with us. Hopefully this was useful to see different ways that the Copilot CLI can be used for developer workflows, how agents can be used. And sadly, in an hour, there's only so much we can fit because the course has even more. So feel free to go through it. So to wrap up, let me just bring up, let me jump out of this and I'll skip right to it for you. Let me bring up this last part here. All right. So again, you can get to the course one of two ways. Either of these links work. Your kind of assignment, should you want to do it, sounds like Mission Impossible or whatever, you know. Your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to go through the assignments on Chapter 3 and Chapter 4. If you haven't gone through 1 and 2, I would recommend those two. And then, yeah, sign up for next week. Chris and I will be back for 2 more sessions on Wednesday and Thursday of next week. So with that, thanks, everybody. Really appreciate your time. Chris, thanks so much for helping with the questions, for giving your excellent insights. We'll catch y'all next time.
Yeah, thank you, folks. Bye now.
Thank you all for joining, and thanks again to our speakers. This session is part of a series. To register for future shows and watch past episodes on demand, you can follow the link on the screen or in the chat. We're always looking to improve our sessions and your experience. If you have any feedback for us, we would love to hear what you have to say. You can find that link on the screen or in the chat. And we'll see you at the next one.